Let me say, can I say one thing?
please.
To me, the great Stanley Kubrick
Yeah.
was an actor's enemy.
Well, he did 100 takes.
He was
per
an
shot.
actor's enemy. And I can point to movies that he's done, the worst performances I've ever seen in movies.
Those are the real, brutal words of Hollywood legend Robert Duvall. You've probably seen the clickbait headlines and YouTube thumbnails floating around, claiming that at 94 years old, Duvall has finally broken his silence and revealed a secret list of 4 actors he despised working with. It's the kind of juicy gossip that's hard to resist, a supposed peek behind the curtain of one of Hollywood's most legendary careers, but in an age of fake news and sensationalism, is any of it actually true? Has the man who gave us some of the most iconic performances in cinema history really published a Hollywood hit list? Today, we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're digging into the viral claims, looking at decades of on-set stories, and separating the hard facts from the fiction. We'll uncover the truth behind feuds so intense that John Wayne had to step in, and find out why Duvall really walked away from millions of dollars and his most famous role. By the end, we'll know for sure which names are, and aren't, on Robert Duvall's real-life Hollywood blacklist. This isn't just a story about feuds, it's a story about artistic integrity and the price of greatness. Before we start tackling the names on this supposed list, you have to understand the man at the center of it all, Robert Duvall. We're not talking about just any actor, this is a titan of the industry, a man whose career spans over 7 decades and who has helped shape modern movies. Born in 1931, the son of a Navy admiral, Duvall brought a kind of grounded discipline to his acting from day one. He studied under the legendary Sanford Meisner in New York City, in a class that was a crucible for a new kind of acting, one that demanded emotional truth above all else. And who were his classmates and roommates back then? Just a couple of guys named Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman. These were young, hungry artists, all pushing each other, bound together by the same relentless pursuit of authenticity. They weren't just learning lines, they were learning how to live truthfully on camera, and that dedication to realism? It became his trademark. His role as the mysterious, silent Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird was a masterclass in saying everything without saying a word. It set the tone for a career built on a quiet, unnerving ability to completely become someone else. Throughout the 70s, he was the backbone of New Hollywood. He was the calm, calculating Tom Hagen in The Godfather, which got him an Oscar nomination. He was the unforgettable, napalm-loving Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore in Apocalypse Now. His work was a testament to his belief that acting had to be grounded in something real. This obsession with truth is the key to understanding the conflicts that came later. Duvall wasn't known for being difficult just for the sake of it. He was demanding of himself, his co-stars, and especially his directors. He hated what he called up acting, a showy style he couldn't stand. He wanted to find the messy, complicated truth of a moment. He once said that the best directors, like Francis Ford Coppola, would step back and see what the actor brought to the table. They collaborated, they didn't dictate, but not every director works that way. And when Robert Duvall's fierce commitment to truth collided with a more rigid style of filmmaking, things could get explosive. It's in those moments of professional clashing, not personal hatred, that the seeds of these viral rumors were planted. So, let's get into it. We'll take the 4 names that pop up most often in these videos and ask a simple question for each, fact or fiction. The first name that consistently appears on these so-called hate lists is Henry Hathaway. The story goes that on the set of the 1969 Western, True Grit, Duvall got into such a bitter feud with him that John Wayne himself had to step in and physically stop it. But there's a huge problem with this viral claim right from the start. Henry Hathaway was not an actor. He was the film's director. Now, that critical mistake doesn't mean there wasn't a fight. Oh, there was definitely a fight. It just wasn't between 2 actors. It was a clash of wills, a battle between a young, method-trained Robert Duvall and an old-school, tyrannical director in Henry Hathaway. Hathaway was a veteran of the old studio system, a guy known for being one of the toughest directors in Hollywood. He wanted actors to hit their marks and say their lines, no questions asked. Duvall, coming from the Sanford Meisner school of thought, needed to understand why his character was doing something. These two approaches were like oil and water, and they exploded on set. Duvall has talked about it many times. He remembered Hathaway giving him the most frustratingly simple direction. He'd say, "When I say, action, tense up, goddamn you," Duvall recalled. For an actor taught to feel an emotion, being told to just tense up was an insult to his craft. In another interview, Duvall was even more direct, calling Hathaway one of the worst directors I ever worked with in my life. Really, the worst. The arguments between the 38-year-old actor and the veteran director were constant. And that's where John Wayne comes in. Wayne, the star of the film, got tired of the fighting. He was loyal to his director and frustrated with Duvall's constant challenges. According to reports from the set, Wayne finally had enough, got in Duvall's face, and threatened to punch him if he didn't stop arguing with Hathaway. So, is the story true? Yes, there was a major conflict. But the rumor that Duvall hated an actor named Henry Hathaway is false. The feud was with his director, and it was about artistic principles. Interestingly, despite the threat from John Wayne, Duvall always spoke highly of the Duke, calling him pleasant and outgoing. The conflict was never personal in the way a hate list suggests. It was professional. And it shows you everything you need to know. About Duvall's principles, the next name that pops up in these sensational videos is one of the most important people in Robert Duvall's career, the director Francis Ford Coppola. The rumor is tied to one of the most controversial casting decisions ever, Duvall's absence from The Godfather Part 3. The gossip paints a picture of a bitter, personal feud that led Duvall to walk away from his most iconic role. It's a dramatic story, and it's almost completely wrong. The real reason Tom Hagen isn't in The Godfather Part 3 has nothing to do with hate and everything to do with respect and money. It wasn't a fight with Coppola, it was a dispute with Paramount Pictures. Here's what really happened. In the late 80s, Coppola finally agreed to make a third Godfather film. The plan was to bring back the whole original cast, and his script was supposedly centered on the falling out between Michael Corleone and Tom Hagen, but then came the negotiations. Al Pacino was offered a massive salary, somewhere between $5 and $8 million. Robert Duvall, an Oscar winner and a pillar of the franchise, was offered $1 million. For Duvall, this was a slap in the face. He's clarified many times that he never expected to make as much as Pacino. But the studio was offering him a tiny fraction of what the lead was making. From his point of view, the studio was treating the character of Tom Hagen, and the actor who made him iconic, as totally disposable. He knew his value to the story, and he refused to be lowballed. There were no screaming matches with Coppola. In fact, Duvall has always said he loved working with Coppola because he was a true collaborator. This was a business decision, a stand against a studio that he felt wasn't treating him fairly. Coppola was stuck. He lost a key character and had to rewrite the entire script. Tom Hagen was killed off-screen, and a new lawyer character was brought in. But as anyone who's seen the movie knows, it just wasn't the same. The absence of Tom Hagen, the moral anchor of the family, left a gaping hole in the film that could never be filled. So when you see a thumbnail claiming Duvall hated Coppola, you're seeing a deliberate twisting of the truth. This wasn't a petty feud. It was about an actor who knew his worth and refused to let the Hollywood machine devalue him. Alright, we're halfway through our investigation, and we've already debunked two of the biggest rumors out there. If you enjoy getting the real story behind these Hollywood legends, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We have two more names to go, and the truth behind them is even more surprising. Now we come to a name that represents the most direct and cutting criticism Robert Duvall has ever made. The third person often mentioned isn't a co-star, but the legendary director Stanley Kubrick. And unlike the other cases, this isn't a misunderstanding or a business problem. This is a deep, philosophical disagreement about acting itself, and Duvall did not mince words. the story comes from a 2010 Hollywood Reporter roundtable. When the actors started talking about directors who demand tons of takes, Duvall took the opportunity to share his opinion on Kubrick. And it was brutal. To me, the great Stanley Kubrick was an actor's enemy, Duvall stated flatly. He didn't stop there, either. He said, "I can point to movies he's done, the worst performances I've ever seen in movies, The Shining, A Clockwork Orange." He called the acting in them terrible, clarifying that while they might be great movies, the performances were fundamentally flawed. So where did this come from? It was all about Kubrick's infamous method of shooting scenes over and over, sometimes hundreds of times. For an actor like Duvall, who relies on spontaneity and finding a moment of truth, this process was the absolute death of authentic performance. He couldn't understand the logic, asking, how does he know the difference between the first take and the 70th take? I mean, what is that about? This wasn't a casual complaint, it gets to the very heart of Duvall's beliefs as an artist. Doing a scene 70 times suggests a director is looking for a specific, mechanical result, trying to force an actor into a box instead of letting them discover the character. It's the exact same thing he fought with Henry Hathaway about. It's important to know that Duvall never actually worked with Stanley Kubrick. He was criticizing him as a fellow artist. He saw Kubrick's films and felt that the director's technical genius completely suffocated the actors. Online, this story gets twisted into Kubrick being on a hate list of co-stars, which is wrong. But the core of the claim, that Duvall had a deep, negative opinion of Kubrick's directing style, is absolutely true. He didn't hate the man, but he completely rejected his artistic process. This case shows that Duvall's feuds aren't about personal hate, but about deeply held artistic principles, and for our final investigation, we have the most baffling and easily disproven claim of them all, the idea that Robert Duvall secretly hated his old friends, Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman. This rumor is the perfect example of how internet gossip can turn a story completely upside down, twisting a lifelong friendship into a fake rivalry. To debunk this one, all we have to do is go back to the beginning. To a cramped New York City apartment in the late 1950s. Long before any of them were famous, Robert Duvall, Dustin Hoffman, and Gene Hackman were more than just actors, they were friends and roommates, struggling together. Hackman and Hoffman had been classmates who were voted least likely to succeed. They moved to New York, where they met Duvall. For a while, Hoffman and Duvall were roommates, and Hackman was always over. They were a trio of broke, talented, ambitious guys who loaned each other money, ran lines together, and dreamed of making it. In a Vanity Fair interview, they all looked back on those days fondly. Duvall said, "Those were good years, not knowing what the future was about. Dreaming. That was fun." This wasn't the start of a feud, it was the foundation of a bond forged in the trenches. Hoffman has often told stories about how Duvall was already a powerful, serious artist back then. And Duvall has said he always knew Hoffman had a special talent. The idea that these men are enemies isn't just false, it's a complete reversal of their real story. They were part of a generation that changed American movies, and they came up together. So, for the final names on this supposed list, the verdict is simple, complete and utter fiction. Robert Duvall, Dustin Hoffman, and Gene Hackman weren't rivals. They were a band of brothers who took on Hollywood and won, on their own terms. To suggest anything else is to ignore one of the great friendships in movie history. So what did we find out? We came here looking for the truth behind the viral claim that Robert Duvall named a list of actors he hated. We looked at a conflict with a director, a walkout from The Godfather, a sharp critique of a film icon, and a supposed feud with his best friends, and the conclusion is clear: the viral hit list is a myth. It's a fabrication, a piece of clickbait woven from half-truths and lies. There's no evidence that Robert Duvall ever publicly named a list of actors he hated. What we found instead is a much more interesting portrait of a man with unshakable principles. The conflict with Henry Hathaway wasn't about hate, it was about an artist refusing to be a puppet for a director. His departure from The Godfather Part 3 wasn't a feud with Coppola, it was a stand for professional respect against a studio. His criticism of Stanley Kubrick wasn't personal, it was a defense of the acting process. And the rumored hatred of Hoffman and Hackman is the most ridiculous fiction of all. The real thread connecting all these stories isn't hate. It's integrity. Robert Duvall built a legendary career by being relentlessly truthful, both in his acting and in his life. He was never afraid of a fight when he felt the work was being compromised. So while the viral hit list is fake, the stories behind it reveal something true about the man. He was an artist who fought for his beliefs, stood his ground against anyone, and valued authenticity above all else. Maybe that made him seem difficult, but it's also what made him a legend. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Hollywood history, be sure to check out our other videos, like our investigation into the most challenging film sets of all time. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss another story. Thanks for watching.